These Raxiom black LED headlights with halos are for those of you that have a 2007 to 2018 JK that are looking for a really high quality replacement to the factory headlights that leave a lot to be desired. Upgrading a headlights on a Jeep has been a very common modification since the TJ because the factory headlights just don't give you a lot of light. This is going to be a nice easy 1 out of 3 wrench installation, but I'm going to show you how to get it done in just a second here. So when you're looking at headlights and upgrading your headlights, you can really go in a bunch of different directions. One is to leave your factory reflector in place and just install a brighter incandescent bulb. Another would be to swap out the factory reflector and the bulb. And then another option is to go with a headlight like this one, which is a full replacement headlight. This is a one piece, you can't just take the bulb out of it. And most of those are going to be LED like these ones. Now, when you're looking at those full LED headlights, those one-piece headlights, some of them are going to be projector headlights and others will be reflector. The projectors do a really nice job of focusing light and giving you a sharp cutoff. That allows the headlight to produce a ton of very bright light because it is so controlled. And that way you know it's not going to be going into the eyes of oncoming traffic. A reflector like this makes it a little bit more challenging to control the light and isn't going to control it as sharply or with as sharp of a cutoff as a projector will, but it's still going to do a really nice job and they're usually a little bit less expensive. I think that this headlight does a very nice job of providing a very bright light, but also a very controlled light, especially for a headlight that does not include a projector. So what you're going to get here is the full sealed headlight, but also you're going to get new headlight buckets, and that's important for those of you that might have a worn out or broken headlight bucket. So this is going to include everything you need for the installation, and the headlight itself, the high beam and the low beam, is going to be completely plug and play. Speaking of high beam and low beam, you're going to have your low beam up on the top here. That is going to provide that really controlled light that you're looking for, and then on the bottom, when you flick the high beams on, is going to give you a nice spread of light that's going to light up the gutters much higher and much further down the road in front of you. Now, that's the headlight with the high beam and the low beam, but I mentioned before this does have an LED bar in the center here that does function as a daytime running light. And that piece is going to require a little bit of wiring. You can get that connected to a variety of different sources. Most of you are going to connect it to your parking lights. That's what we did, and that's how I'm going to show you how to get this wired up in just a second. But overall, I really like the look of this light, and I also like the functionality, especially for the price. This light comes in at right around that $330 mark, and I think that is a very good deal for what you're getting here. Again, a lot of projector lights are going to do a little bit of a nicer job controlling the light, give you a little bit of a sharper cutoff, but for the price, I don't think you're going to beat this LED headlight. I mentioned a couple times now the installation. Now, let me get into it and show you how to do it. For this install, we used a small pry bar and also a trim removal tool and a couple of different wiring tools. These might vary depending on how you wire your headlights, but we used a pair of wire cutters and a pair of wire crimpers and strippers. So the first step in this installation is, of course, removing the factory headlights, and in order to do that, you have to pop the grille off. The good news is that's very easy to do. There are a couple of plastic clips across the top here that we're going to remove, and then just give it a tug to remove it. So first things first, let's pop the hood. So there are 6 of these plastic clips across the top of the grille. We're going to use a trim removal tool, but you could also just use a flathead screwdriver to pop all of them off. Now that all of the plastic clips are removed, you can really just give the grille a little bit of a tug and it'll pop right off. What you will have to do then is unplug these marker lights that are in the grille in order to completely remove it from the Jeep. Pretty simple to do. Now we can remove the headlights and the headlight buckets from the Jeep. So some replacement headlights that you'll find won't mess with the buckets. Those factory buckets will be just fine. And all you're gonna do is remove a couple of screws around the outside here, this trim ring, the headlight itself will come out and you'll pop a new one in. But these headlights do come with a new bucket, so we're going to remove the headlights and the buckets all as one piece. So as you can see, ours are pretty well broken, they're pretty loose in here. Yours, of course, won't be moving around like this, or at least they shouldn't be. But in order to get the bucket and the headlight removed, what you're going to have to do is pry the headlight bucket off of the small tabs that it sits on. So there are no screws, there are no bolts. These really just sit in place here. So we're going to be using this small pry bar, but a screwdriver is just fine as well. And you're going to pry in here and pop the bucket out. Once the headlight and the headlight bucket are out of the radiator support, you can simply unplug the headlight. So while we have one stock light out of the Jeep, this is a really good opportunity to compare these side by side and really show you what the difference is going to be. So as you can see on the stock light here, you have a reflector, completely clear lens over top of it, and there is an incandescent bulb in there that has 2 filaments. So on the low beam, you have 1 filament on. When you kick the high beams on, you have both filament on to give you a little bit more light. On the back side here, you can see that the bulb itself will come out of that reflector pretty easily, and this is where your wiring harness plugs in. Other than that, not a lot to say about the factory light. It's going to be very, very simple. No daytime running lights, no turn signals, no projectors, no LEDs, nothing like that. What we're going to have on our Raxiom light here is going to be very, very different. This is going to have an upper section and a lower section that are divided by an LED in the center there. So the center LED, that one lights up as a daytime running light. So that can really be tied to whatever power source you want. I think most of you are going to tie that directly to your parking lamps that are on the grille themselves. And that's going to be this 2-wire pigtail here. That's going to power just this stripe in the center here. Then the low beam is going to be up top here. That's going to aim light down onto the road for you. And the high beam is on the bottom. So when you kick the high beams on, that's going to throw a lot more light in pretty much any location, any direction. It's really going to scatter light, and that's what you want from your high beam. You don't want it necessarily as focused as your low beam. Now, it's important to note here that while this is an LED light, that this is a sealed light, so there's no bulb that you can take out here. This is going to be a completely sealed unit. This is not going to be a projector LED. So oftentimes with an LED, because it is such a bright light, a manufacturer will use a projector to control that light, and it allows you to get a really, really crisp, clean cutoff. So again, you're not scattering light, and that's very, very important when you have something very, very bright. You don't want to be blinding oncoming drivers. What you're going to have here is a reflector with an LED. But this still does a really nice job of controlling that light. You still have a pretty crisp cutoff, not like you would with a projector, but it is going to be pretty crisp. So you're going to get something here that's going to provide you with a lot of light in a very usable location, where here you don't have any sort of specific reflector for the high beam or the low beam. You certainly don't have any kind of projector, and you're using an incandescent bulb. So brighter, more controlled light than you would get with the factory headlight. Now we can move on to the installation of the new headlight. So the actual headlight and the high beam, that just is a very easy connection. It's plug and play. This connector goes directly into your factory connector, no problem there. Really no big deal. What we do have to do a little bit of wiring on is that daytime running light that we talked about. So what you're going to get out of the box is this 2-wire pigtail. You're going to have a 12 volt and a ground, and that's going to power that small DRL in the middle there. So you can really have that hooked into whatever you want, but it's recommended that you use your parking lights. So that means when you have the parking lights on, that light will come on. When you have your headlights on, that light will remain on. And of course, when you have the high beams on, it will remain on as well. If you wanted to do something a little bit different with the daytime running light, have it on all the time whenever the ignition is on, you could hook this to any ignition hot on the Jeep, so you can get a little bit creative there. But again, for most of you, the parking lights are going to be where you'll want to go. So there's a connector right here that is a 2-wire connector, and that is going to be on when the parking lights are on. So if you're going to be doing this as a full permanent installation, what most of you will do is cut this connector off. You'll strip the wire there. These wires come pre-stripped for you, and you'll use a butt connector or a butt splice and some heat shrink to connect these wires onto where this factory connector was. Now, if you don't want to cut off that factory connector, or maybe you're like us and you plan to go back to a factory headlight at some point, you can find a spade connector that will fit inside of this factory connector, and then use some heat shrink and or electrical tape to make sure nothing is going to vibrate loose on you. And that's what we're going to do. We have a couple of crimp-on spade connectors right here. We're going to attach those onto our headlight. That way we can plug into this factory connector instead of having to cut it off. So we'll go ahead and make the crimps now, then we'll feed all of our wires through the hole here and actually put the headlight in the Jeep. So just give these wires a little bit of a twist. We have our small spade connectors that we had to customize a little bit just to shorten them up so they'll fit in that factory connector. Slide them over the wire there. A pair of crimpers to crimp them together. At this point, we could use a little bit of heat to shrink the end of the spade connectors down. If we were going to be using these as a permanent installation, again, we're just doing this as a demo, so we're not going to go ahead and do that. Now all we have to do is feed these wires through the radiator support here where the hole is. That way the wires don't get pinched when we make the installation of the headlight complete. Go ahead and plug these into that factory connector there. Positive and ground. Tuck that off to the side. And again, if we were doing this as a more permanent installation, we would heat shrink that and we'd also use some electrical tape on that connector. Now we can go ahead and plug the headlight itself in. Of course, you want to push down on that red safety clip as well, that way nothing can disconnect due to vibration. Now that the daytime running light's hooked up and the headlight itself is plugged in, all you have to do is feed the wires into the radiator support and push the headlight into place. So just like the old headlight just popped off, this one's just going to push into place. You just want to make sure that you get all of the connection points pre-lined up before you give it any sort of pressure. Once everything's lined up, go ahead and clip it into place. Now we'll move on to the other side, following the same steps. Now, before we pop the grill back on, there are a couple of things I do want to mention. The first thing is that there is a left headlight and a right headlight. So if you try to put the wrong one in the wrong side, you won't be able to. It's not like you can make a mistake and have to pull it back apart again. They'll only line up with their attachment points in one way. So if you grab one headlight, you try and put it in, it doesn't line up, just go ahead and flip it over to the other side. Not a big deal there. Now, the other thing I want to note is that anytime you're doing anything with your headlights, whether it's new bulbs, a different kind of bulb, or a whole new headlight like this, it's very important to aim your headlights. You don't want to be that guy who's driving around blinding everyone who's driving toward them. That is not the person you want to be. So make sure that you get your headlights adjusted properly. There are a couple of different methods to do this. One, you can pull your Jeep up to a wall and actually mark where the factory headlights hit, install these new headlights, and then adjust them so they hit in the same spot. Or skip that first step and just look up one of the many headlight aiming guides online. They'll tell you exactly how high off the ground your headlights are supposed to be hitting a wall at a certain distance from that wall. So again, make sure that you get your headlights adjusted properly. And the adjustment screw is going to be this one right here. It's a Torx head screw, and that's going to allow you to adjust the headlights up and down. Make sure you get them adjusted properly. What we're going to do now is pop the grill back into place. And we'll pop our plastic clips back into place. The last step is closing the hood. So if you are looking for a very fairly priced and incredibly high quality LED headlight for your JK, I would recommend this option from Raxiom, and you can find it right here at ExtremeTerrain.com.